Joker, Folie, as some people are calling it. I wouldn't go that far to say, but Joker, Folie, I don't think it's an understatement, or I don't think it's wrong to say that it is one of the most anticipated movies of the year for a lot of people, or at least it was when it was on my top 10 most anticipated list. I saw it on a lot of people's top 10 most anticipated lists, and it's crazy. It's crazy to how life works. How a movie that grosses $1 billion at the box office back in 2019 has an opening weekend of $96 million. This lower budget, kind of indie feeling film about a comic book villain, an origin, an unorthodox origin for a character, and audiences just flocked out to see it. And then to have a sequel that's as highly anticipated as that movie warrants, and it just flops. And it flops hard. And Joker, Folie is one of like the worst outings for a sequel I've seen in a very long time, if not ever. Take a look at this, guys. This comes to us from Variety, and they say this: Joker, box office, Joker Folie braces for a brutal 65% drop as Terrifier 3 aims for a solid 10 million debut. That's very solid for that kind of movie. Two murderous clowns will face off at the weekend box office as Terrifier 3 and Joker Folie contend for the top slot on domestic charts. Ticket sales for the Joker sequel are projected to drop by at least 60 to 65% in its second weekend, which would amount to $13 to $15 million. However, that's on the optimistic end. Box office experts wouldn't be surprised if the offbeat comic book musical suffered a tragic 70 to 75% decline, putting revenues at $9 million to $11 million. Hobbled by poor reviews and terrible word of mouth, Joker 2 opened last weekend with a disastrous $37.6 million. To put that again, guys, into a little bit of a perspective, the first Joker back in 2019 opened to $96 million opening weekend, domestically alone. And this made less than half of what that box office did back in 2019. Continues saying that it says that based on those projections, Terrifier 3 has a potential to pull off an upset. The third installment in the Terrifier franchise is targeting a 10 million to 13 million from 2,514 venues in the first weekend of release. It would be a huge start for the ultra gory, low budget slasher film. There's a couple things here, guys, to really talk about. First of all, the disastrous, horrible outcome of Joker Folie. Let's not forget that Joker Folie, as I mentioned, was one of the most highly anticipated movies for the entire year. It was the last movie that I was highly anticipating for this entire year, and now that's gone. Even though I didn't hate the movie, I found some enjoyment in the movie. The ending really tanked the whole thing for me, but overall, I didn't hate my experience watching Joker Folie, but a lot of people did. There was a lot of reports of people refunding tickets before they even went to go see it, even though they had opening weekend tickets in their pockets. And now we live in a world where Joker Folie may fall completely out of the top 10 in the box office by its second weekend, and Terrifier 3, a movie from 2006, a movie that started in 2016, low budget, $35,000 budget, I believe, was the first movie. Terrifier 2 kind of gave this big cult following in 2022. Now that movie might surpass this $200 million Hollywood produced film from Warner Brothers about the iconic character of the Joker. What happened? What happened? What world do we live in right now, guys? Now, I don't have like the expertise talking to me. I'm not an expert myself. But when you look at Joker Folie, when you look at the tragedy the tragedy in the box office that this movie has been, I really don't think it's that hard to trace it back to what went wrong. I think from the get-go, as much as I applaud, as much as I admire, respect, and appreciate Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix trying to do something bold, something hugely unique and different in the comic book movie realm, making this a musical was the first misstep. It was the first mistake. Because even before Joker Folie, even before the trailer came out, I remember hearing people, it's a musical. I'm not a fan of musicals. I don't think I want to see that if it's a musical. And it was never turned around once that trailer came out. When I thought that people agreed the trailer looked beautiful, I thought they released a awesome trailer. But there were still those people out there that were like, but it's a musical. Now, I'm not saying that the musical crowd and the comic book movie crowd don't overlap, that they can't overlap. There's a lot of people who like comic book movies and musicals. I'm someone who likes musicals. I like comic book movies. But the overlap is smaller. It is smaller. When you put musical into comic book movies, the general person, the casual comic book movie goer, isn't really looking for a musical. They want action. They want excitement. They want the thrills that comic book movies usually give. And this went totally against its market. It went totally against its audience by being a musical. And I think that was their first mistake. Obviously, the budget. $200 million was crazy for Warner Brothers to give this movie. I understand the first one made $1 billion, so they were expecting a repeat for $1 billion. But as soon as Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix come to you and say, we want to make this a musical, how do you give that $200 million? And by the way, when I was watching the movie, I did not see $200 million on screen. I mean, Joaquin Phoenix, Lady Gaga, Todd Phillips, they must have taken big paydays because I did not see $200 million on that screen. Even though it looked gorgeous, even though the movie looked phenomenal, it mostly takes place in a prison and a courtroom. How did it cost $200 million? And yes, there was music to be licensed. I understand that too. But I think the biggest thing that Warner Brothers is probably kicking themselves for is having this, first of all, premiere at Venice Film Festival and having this have a screener for fans the Monday before its release on the Friday. I think that was a huge mistake on Warner Brothers' part because what that did was, yeah, the critics, they came out of Venice, they weren't loving the movie. I think it was still getting decent reviews though. When I looked at it after the Venice Film Festival, it was holding like a 61-63% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was a positive score. But that Monday early fan screening, I think, was the nail in this movie's coffin. Because I remember after that Monday screening is when the vitriol hatred for this movie started online. And I had my tickets for Thursday. So for 4 days solid, online, all over Twitter, all over YouTube, this movie was just getting trashed. This movie was being buried in the gutter by fans who came out of that screening. To the point that, someone like me, I've got my tickets. I was morbidly curious at that point to see just how bad this could be. But casual audiences, when they heard that, a lot of tickets got refunded. A lot of people decided not to go to the theater. The word of mouth was just so horrendously bad. I mean, it's some of the worst word of mouth for a movie I think I've ever heard. Even Megalopolis, I think, had better word of mouth than Joker Folie did. And it's just a movie that went totally against its audience, and the audience revolted. And it told the rest of the audience, this isn't for you guys. They've ruined it. They've botched it. Don't go. And that was almost unanimous from the audience. There were very, very, very few voices out there that said, you should check it out. Even someone like me, who's a defender of the movie. You can check out my non-spoiler review. I didn't recommend this movie. I don't recommend you go see this movie. It's not the worst thing you're going to put on. It's not the worst experience you're going to have at the theater. But even someone like me, who found merit in it, who found things to enjoy and appreciates it a little bit, even I said, it's a weak not recommend. So now we're seeing the results in the box office. And I'll tell you what. I'm not an expert. I've already made that very clear. I'm not an expert. I have no expertise whatsoever. But I don't think this thing makes 15 million. I think this I do think with this, I think this is going to have a huge decline in its second weekend. I think we're maybe 10 million. I think it's going to fall drastically. And it's a bummer. It's a bummer because, like I said, I admire what they decided to do. I admire Joaquin and Todd Phillips' ambition to make this movie something very different and unique. They took a comic book movie genre, grounded it down to a unconventional story about a very popular, iconic villain, and on top of that, they added a musical element. And I think that musical element broke a lot of people's back. Was the straw that broke the back. So, yeah, this is very unfortunate. This is going to be a huge loss for Warner Brothers, and now really it's a certified bomb. And we're just waiting to see just how bad the damage is.